road again.
Why don't you ask me what it feels like to be a freak?
Welcome to the Blue Bike Indoors channel. Today we're going to head down to the West Georgia Museum here in Tallapoosa.
Three generations of the Johnson family served the people of Tallapoosa in Johnson's shoe repair shop. H.T. Johnson's son David helped in the shop in later years and still has the 100-year-old shoe repair equipment. C.F. Johnson came to the United States from Sweden in the late 1880s and on to Tallapoosa during the boom days in 1896. The shoe shop was located downstairs in the old post office building at the west corner of Allowine and Highway 78. The framed overalls and book satchel were made by H.T. Johnson on the shop sewing machine for his daughter Mary. H.T. Johnson married Grace Sempt in 1931. Her father was also in the leather business. He manufactured horse collars at a factory in Tallapoosa. The two small ones are samples that he took around with him to sell. One was developed especially by Harry Sempt. The bench was the one on which the horse collars were made. Johnson's shoe shop closed in 1962. That once belonged to our many area doctors. The microscope was the property of Dr. Harry Forrester, the father of the late Francis Green, who for years was the editor of the Tallapoosa Journal. Dr. Forrester taught biology at North Georgia College in Dahlonega, Georgia, and later retired to Tallapoosa. Of special interest is an old bag that once belonged to Dr. Newman, who practiced medicine in this area during the late 1800 period. An interesting story is told on Dr. Newman by his grandson, Doris Newman of Tallapoosa. He states that the doctor had some patients who often imagined that they had some strange illness. Dr. Newman would give them some baking soda that was wrapped in little paper packages, much like the familiar BC headache powders. After taking those miracle powders for a few days, the patients would later tell the doctor that they were feeling much better. Dr. Newman often went and stayed with a patient who was critically ill, sometimes for a week or more. He traveled in a horse and buggy, and his host would feed him and his horse until the patient was well. Many times he was paid, not with money, but with butter, eggs, corn, syrup, and other items. According to records left behind by Dr. Newman, his usual fee for delivering a baby was $3. Various banks served the Tallapoosa area over the last 100 years, but the furnishings in this exhibit come from the old commercial bank in Tallapoosa. This bank was founded by Mr. W.H. Wright, better known as Banker Wright. He was a familiar figure in town and could often be seen strolling down the street with a walking stick in one hand and a Coca-Cola in the other. Several well-known Tallapoosans worked for Mr. Wright, including Louis Roberts, Virgil Roberts, Virginia Pounds, and Elizabeth Newman. Later, the bank's name was changed to the Commercial Bank Incorporated, and then to the present First National Bank of Georgia. All the furnishings in the dentist exhibit came from the office of Dr. T.G. Hill, who served this area from the early part of the last century and up into the 1940s. In the left-hand corner, the box-like piece of equipment is one of the first edition X-ray machines. The dental chair was put together by Dr. Harry Green, our present dentist, from 3 old chairs that were left to Dr. Hill's family. Notice the drill machine with the foot pedal that made the drill turn. Dr. Hill was a big fisherman and often fished in the coffee-colored waters of the Tallapoosa River. His diploma hangs on the wall. The dry goods store features clothing worn by the ladies early in the last century. Once, when a grandfather and his grandson viewed the exhibit, the grandson asked, "Grandpa, what are those things hanging there?" "Well, they're girdles," replied the grandfather. "Well, what is a girdle?" the boy asked. The grandfather thought a moment and then dutifully replied, "Son, a girdle is something that keeps a woman in when she is trying to go out." Many years ago, especially in a small town, the United States Post Office was set up in a private home. The home, of course, belonged to the person who usually served as postmaster or postmistress. The post office you are viewing here was donated to the museum by Ms. Carolyn Pilgrim. She was the postmistress in Edwardsville, Alabama, and this post office was set up in her home. Such a place not only served to distribute the mail, but it was kind of a social place where people met and learned the latest news or gossip. Often the postmistress was called upon to find out where people lived in the area or other general information that people needed to know. their daily lives. On the left side, you will see one of the first sewing machines that were marketed in this country. On down the line are various items of clothing that were used by women of an earlier period. On the back wall are 2 dresses that were worn at Tallapoosa's 1960 centennial celebration. Also notice on the left side an old optometrist chair and refractor that were donated to the museum by Dr. Yo from Bremen, Georgia.
Dr. Yo. Settlers cabin.
Haralson County at one time was occupied by the Creek Indians. As the first settlers moved into our county, of course they had to have homes, and the materials for making them, rocks, lumber, etc., were readily available. In our cabin depicted here, the period represented is probably around the 1850 to 1860 period. Heat was provided by the fireplace. It also served as a place to cook meals. Later on, cast iron stoves would serve this purpose. Notice the lamps scattered around to furnish lighting. Also see the chamber pot under the bed. This served as an emergency bathroom during the night or in foul weather. Once a visiting first grader went home from a museum visit and said, "Mama, they have a log cabin at the museum and the bathroom is under the bed." Also notice the old percussion-type shotgun over the bed. This was kept for hunting or for protection. As more settlers moved into the area, homes were improved and the old log cabin gradually faded into obscurity. The whiskey still was confiscated many years ago by then Haralson County Sheriff Kenneth Spearman. The still was set up in an old chicken house and was producing approximately 4 gallons a day. Illegal whiskey used to be a big industry in this area back during the 1940, 1950, and on up into the 1960 period. The industry began to fade out as the cost of sugar and the other materials used to make whiskey became so high that not much profit could be made. Also, the revenue officers became more relentless in their pursuit of bootleggers, as the whiskey makers were called. This blacksmith shop in its entirety was donated by the family of the late James Camp, who last used his equipment in 1928. In those days, people were dependent on a good blacksmith to repair wagons, tools, and other items, and they were an important part of the community. Shoeing horses was another very important function of the local blacksmith. With the advent of the automobile, there was not much use for a blacksmith, and the trade gradually faded away.
that concludes the museum. Well, I hope you enjoyed the museum tour of West Georgia. So y'all ride safe, and we'll catch you next time.